Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and this is another episode of Planets in Profile. Today, we are going to take a look at Mercury in the sign of Libra. So, as you've been watching this series, you know that I've taken Mars and Venus through the signs. I've been taking Mercury through the signs, and I'm usually playing catch up on a certain level, but hopefully, this is evergreen content that you can always get something good out of. So, in these videos, you can learn basically two things: how to interpret Mercury in any given sign or whatever planet we're doing in this series. And also, even more importantly, how planets interact and behave in relationship to one another. For example, today we're looking at Mercury in the sign of Libra, which is Venus's sign. How does Mercury interact with or relate to Venus, and specifically the Libran side of Venus? Well, that's what we're looking at today. All right, so let's begin by a little description of Mercury in Libra. Mercury is sort of neutral in Libra. It doesn't have any form of rulership or exaltation or any form of debility such as detriment or fall. In this sign, Mercury is dependent upon Venus and Venus's location, where Venus is at and what Venus is doing. So you always want to look at, whenever Mercury is in Libra, you also need to look at Venus in the chart or by transit if you're studying, if you're doing some forecasting or something like that. As Venus goes, so will Mercury when Mercury is in Venus's home. All right, so Libra is the warm and moist masculine air sign of Venus. Air can be broken down to the warm and moist qualities. Ancient astrologers did that at a certain point, related the element of air to warmth and moisture. Also, it's considered a masculine or yang sign. And you can also associate it with the element of air. And then it is the temple of Venus. So it's the home of Venus. Now, Mercury is thus going to express itself not only in Venusian ways, but in those particular ways that those particular Venusian ways, because Venus in Taurus is a lot different than Venus in Libra. So you're getting the expression of a Mercury through the Libran side of Venus. Now, what does that mean? You kind of have to have a sense of what Libra is all about. Remember, well, actually, let's back up and start with Mercury just as a refresher. So Mercury is the god of communication and is related to the mind and to speech and to the intellect and to writing. It is also, Mercury is associated with the messenger, with busy marketplaces, information, and technology. It's a very inventive planet. It's also associated sometimes with thievery and trickery, with markets and money exchange. I think I already mentioned that, with highways and travel, but also thieves on the highway can be associated with that as well. So those are just a few things that Mercury is associated with. When you're delineating Mercury in a chart, there's sort of a wide range of things that Mercury could end up representing. Mercury was also a key ingredient to the study of temperament. You would look at your ascendant ruler planets in the first house, the moon, and typically Mercury, in order to get a sense of how a person might act and behave, what their personality might be like. So we have to remember that now, again, all of those qualities are going to now have to be filtered through the lens of Venus, who is the goddess related to peace, friendship, pleasant or enjoyable things, harmony, love, sensuality, femininity, and grace and ease. So as well as romance and, of course, kind of the erotic or romantic dimensions of relationships, marriage, but also affairs and affairs of the heart and things like that. So you can also relate Venus to art. So when Mercury is in Venus's sign of Libra, unlike when Venus is in Mercury's sign of Virgo, Mercury can do pretty well with Venus in this sign, provided that Venus isn't in a debilitated condition itself in the chart somewhere. And typically what you're going to see is, and remember that I should add this in, remember that Libra is also the exaltation of Saturn. So Libra is the sign in which Saturn is exalted and the sign in which the sun is in its fall, which means that there is this very interesting way in which the sign of Libra brings out a slightly darker element of Venus. For example, and I'll give lots of chart examples, famous people who have this placement in their chart, but think, for example, of the fact that the sun is essentially going into the basement of the solar year during this, during the Libran season. As that's happening, darkness is taking over. And so your Libra fall, the fall equinox, has as its symbol, Saturn, the god of winter, decay, death, judgment, as the sun is entering the underworld. And so this is a Venus that is interested in beauty and harmonization, which means that there will be a way in which darkness is harmonized with light, but usually the tone of darkness or finality or death or consequence or a degree of heaviness will be there kind of as an accent for Venus. And so, for example, one of the classic Libran, beauty or style qualities will be black and white. And the contrast between light and dark, oftentimes with also a way of celebrating the darker, like black and white photography, a black and white photo of two people in like very classy looking clothing, kissing out in the rain as they're drenched in New York City or something like that. It's very Libran. So think also of this as not just a sign of Venus, but as a sign that pays close attention to darkness and to Saturn and to fairness, judgment. And so it's not just any beauty. There's a kind of tragic autumnal beauty to this particular Venusian expression. Okay, and that also means that when Mercury is in Libra, you have to be careful of things that are petaled off to look light but are dark, or things that are dark that are made to look light, or the alternation or play between light and dark, which can be very classy and can also represent someone who's very poised and sophisticated and sort of serious and mature in that kind of Saturnine way, exaltation of Saturn, but also very articulate, graceful, stylish, etc. So let me try to give you some examples of how this works. So for example, there are people that are going to fit this really this for the alternation between light and dark. Sorry, I'm trying to talk really nicely. Where's my list here? So for example, Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie is, of course, a famous novelist who writes about darker subjects like murder and mystery, and yet she is this very classy, and many of the settings of her novels are very sort of classy and sort of socialite in nature. So she has this very refined style and taste, and many of the characters and plots and settings are with people who are wealthy or well-to-do, but then there will be the unveiling of some darkness behind the surface. And that's a classic theme in her literature. Anyway, Sylvia Browne, here's someone who is sort of a psychic medium, and by all accounts is into occult matters, things that are more hidden, mysterious, etc. But she has this very polished, and she's one of the first, kind of groundbreaking, famous like media personalities. She goes on to she's very welcomed by mainstream media at a certain time in her career, right? And so that darkness, that occult quality, but she's also like a media personality, very Mercury in Libra. You can also think of two children's writers that come to my mind. Well, one's kind of a children's writer, Jim Henson, where Jim Henson, if you think about, I don't know, The Dark Crystal and lots of other things that Jim Henson does, there's a quality of light, but also this willingness to explore darkness, but still doing it in a way that's almost childlike, friendly, very classy and poised, and like artistically sophisticated. So that's oftentimes you'll see Mercury and Libra as people who have this kind of artistic skill or a gift or some kind of ability to make something a little bit dark or strange, like appealing and beautiful. And that's oftentimes a Mercury and Libra trait. Another example is Roald Dahl. I'm sure you all know Roald Dahl, right? Strange kids books that are really dark, but also he's so artistic and brilliant. Another one that could fit in there that he's not a Mercury and Libra, but a similar personality that has similar contrasts in his chart that are very much in line with this combination is Tim Burton, right? But different chart. But so you also have people who have this kind of classy, smooth, but smoky, deep, dark, beautiful quality to their skill as a musician, like Harry Connick Jr. or John Coltrane. Similarly, you have photographers, famous artists like photographers like Linda McCartney, also Mercury in Libra. George Martin and Ursula K. Le Guin are two fantasy authors, sci-fi/fantasy authors who both have this amazing artistic sensibility, right? I mean, just wordsmiths and just brilliant intellectually, but they have a way of also speaking to human darkness that's quite profound. And you're often going to see that in the quality of the writers who have Mercury in Libra, that there is a sensibility and a darkness at once. And oftentimes you can describe Mercury, like a bit like Pluto in Libra too, the Pluto in Libra generation, but Mercury in Libra is sort of like the iron glove, or the velvet glove over the iron fist, where there's a way of almost adorning or decorating something heavy or dark or leaden. And that's the Saturn exaltation there. There's other people who embody the seriousness as well as the kind of diplomacy, grace, and beauty and articulateness, like Barbara Walters, who is one of the one of the groundbreaking female news anchors. I think it was ABC News. She was the first on their network or something like that. But you also have people like Sophia Loren, another great example of the class, the elegance, the grace, but there's kind of a smoky, dark quality that's there as well. Vladimir Putin, right? He has a very suave presentation, and of course, it glosses over a lot of very dark stuff that he does. But you can also, one could make a case, for example, like Bill Gates, and I'm not on the Bill Gates. I'm not into the whole conspiracy thing, but just in terms of being someone who's like a tech billionaire or whatever, who has this interest in philanthropy and has also been even just associated throughout his lifetime with a lot of controversy, especially, very recently. But I think it's very fascinating that oftentimes, Warren Buffett is another one with Mercury in Libra. Beyonce Knowles is another one. It's almost as though they're Mercury in Libra. Well, Margaret Thatcher was another one as well. All of them are almost like emperors or empresses, and they have this command. They have such grace and composure, but at the same time, there is this this kind of dark, heavy, serious quality to their art or to their presidents, or Margaret Thatcher, of course, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was quite conservative, right? So you'll often find another one that I love, another really good example of Mercury in Libra, in case I'm not getting it across enough, would be Leonard Cohen, right? Again, dark, heavy, beautiful. You know what I mean? So that familiarity with darkness is really, really important. Simon Cowell is another one where there can be this very judgmental and critical quality, like a hyper acute judgmental awareness of what's valuable or what's not valuable, what's beautiful or not. So he's a kind of judge critic type of character. These are all great examples, I think. You can see, let's see, Caitlyn Jenner is another one. Bruce Springsteen. Both, I think you could say, have like a good contrast between light and dark. Bruce Springsteen in particular comes to my mind because, when he's young, he's like this young kid, muscle cars, cigarettes, knife fights on the Jersey boardwalk, tough guy, cocky, sexy, suave, all of it. And as he ages, he becomes something. His music becomes more politically active, and he also he throughout his life he talks openly about battling with depression. So he's a complex character that that Mercury in Libra also reflects. Let's see, is it Avicii? I'm not how you say it. He was the DJ. I think he passed, but brilliant sort of technicians of art that can blend the dark and the light. And don't pass over Libra when it comes to science fiction either, because science fiction is often very Saturnine, and Libra oftentimes, we think about science fiction landscapes. If you ever saw the movie Solaris or Gattaca with Ethan Hawke, some of these landscapes in the future, they're very like pristine and clean and very like well organized and hyper controlled and rigid, and often involve some kind of authoritarian presence. Um, and there's oftentimes exploration of beauty and structure and control, and like almost like dystopian or like post-apocalyptic landscapes, and the contrast between like destruction and humankind's ability to control and make the most beautiful things, but maybe with some kind of rigidity involved. Often those themes are present in science fiction at any rate, and it's such a Libran theme. Those are such Libran themes. Christopher Reeve, if you want to talk about another really interesting Mercury and Libra character. Of course, Christopher Reeve becomes a philanthropist after becoming a quadriplegic through a horseback riding accident. He played, if you guys don't know, he was original Superman, or not the original, but he was the original feature-length film Superman, I think, back in like the 80s maybe. So Christopher Reeve and his wife Dana become these incredible philanthropists, and they do a lot of good, especially for stem cell research and things like that. But he was also someone who became really interested in this kind of like very futuristic technology, right? That could be that could restore or bring people bring back the facilities of people who had potentially lost them, like himself. I'm telling you right now, there's just a really interesting element of Libra that has to do with also the desire to repair or fix things that are broken, or to make something broken beautiful. Or like, for example, the people who take those, I think they take like broken pieces of a pot and then they make a new pot with gold, like sealing all the broken pieces together. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? I don't know what that's called. Someone tell me what that's called. But this idea, or even like if you think about the artwork I was mentioning earlier, where there's like these broken fragments of glass, and you'll see the broken fragments of glass, but inside of them they're reflecting flowers or something like that. So this real kind of sense of finding or restoring beauty in relation to something that's been lost or something that's dying or dead. And oftentimes that plays into sci-fi themes really, in technology in a very interesting way. I'm only just starting to articulate that idea, by the way. So I'll probably, when we get to some transits in Libra, I'll probably bring that back up and keep going with it, because I've been noticing it for so long, and this is one of my first attempts to ever articulate that part. But David Copperfield is another example, though. He has Mercury in Libra, and of course he's a master magician, sleight of hand, but he combines like sexy, dark, mysterious with all sorts of interesting, weird technology. That's such a Mercury in Libra placement. Remember, Mercury is one of the gods of technology as well, so this is why I'm talking about this with regard to Mercury in Libra. But James Gandolfini, if you guys know him from The Sopranos, that mafioso where there's the appearance of luxury or wealth, but there's this dark underbelly, and there's like crime. And so oftentimes Mercury in Libra can be the appearance of something noble or humanitarian with underlying selfish interests and things like that. Which is, of course, exactly, I think, why, even whether it's true or not, why people often suspect Bill Gates. It's because he has that weird, like, that weird kind of Iron Man. He's who's similar, a little bit similar of a vibe, but different chart again, is what's the Tesla guy, Elon Musk, where there's this almost it's almost like an otherworldly kind of dark, mysterious quality, but it's also like very beautiful and polished and progressive and inventive. That's very Mercury in Libra. Different chart doesn't have that placement, but I'm just giving you more examples where you can think of, and there's things in his chart that feed into that as well. So lots of placements in astrology can speak to some of the same themes, because you're essentially combining similar elements. Stephen King, very similar. He can he can expose he's a very beautiful writer, and he can expose the dark underbelly of like the nice pristine little East Coast town. It's always Castle Rock or whatever whatever it is. Okay, Bernie Sanders. Here's another example where you have people who are truly like advocates for justice or peace or equality or something that's truly humanitarian or whatever. Like, people who are interested in equality, and this could be on the right or the left. Like, for example, I think it's, who's the Fox guy? Bill O'Reilly, or he used to be the Fox guy. He has Mercury in Libra too. All right. And Amma. Amma is a great example. If you know Amma, the hugging saint, has Mercury in Libra. Of course, she's a major global philanthropist as well. All right. Well, hopefully that gives you some feeling for Mercury in Libra. And how to delineate it. Of course, it's always going to matter to look at Venus's position relative to Mercury, because that will add a whole secondary and very important layer to the interpretation. I find that Mercury in Libra's best side is usually in the ability to tolerate certain kinds of moral ambiguities and to find beauty in the contrast between light and dark, to be able to harmonize elements of light and dark, or of complicated themes that would seem antagonistic towards one another. And oftentimes there is a very, what I want to say, a way of articulating oneself that really speaks to people. That's very easy and fluid. And oftentimes for children too, which is why I think it's so interesting that Jim Henson and Roald Dahl have Mercury in Libra, where there's just this ability to speak to the contrasts that are so bright and vivid for children between light and dark. All right. So do you have Mercury in Libra? I would love to hear from you if you do, and please add your thoughts to this video or any other interpretations or famous people that you think should have been in this presentation that I might have missed. I'd love to hear from you guys. And then stay tuned, because I'll be doing Mercury in Scorpio pretty quickly as well. All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.